So I'm very happy that Aaron could join us here to talk about the exhibition. So, Aaron, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Philip. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, it's a great show, and there's a lot of different kinds of pieces. As we kind of look through some installation shots, do you want to talk a little bit about some of your ideas going into this show?
Sure. Like a lot of my shows, my working habits are usually that um, early on in the year, like let's say a show is sort of a year distant or 10 months distant or something, I'll work pretty freely, experimenting on a number of paintings. And usually in that period, I get a couple that I like. And then those start to steer me in the direction that I want the show to go in. And in this case, I had the idea to do a couple of these nocturne night sky paintings. And I liked that they were, also a large atmosphere, but of stars this time instead of clouds. And I liked that they were sort of graphic and dynamic. So I started off with a couple of those paintings, and I liked how they could set off against maybe a more naturalistic kind of landscape, like the one we're looking at here with the blue sky and white clouds and the hunting scene.
Hmm.
Um, that they could be sort of in a similar topography or similar territory, if you will, but just different times of day or different mental states, however you want to see them.
Yeah.
So the show ended up broadly being having a lot of kind of, I guess, different vistas and points of view for Western landscape, and that's also then where the title came from.
Do you want to talk just a little bit about the Western landscape and how it's figured in your life and work?
Well, in my life, I grew up in the Southwest in Tucson, Arizona. I was born there, and I was lucky enough to be in a family that did a lot of road trips in the summertime. So a lot of time on the road and a lot of exposure to that landscape through camping and backpacking and things like that. So I feel very familiar with the landscape as a reality, as a real thing. Then there's also all of the uh, comic books and movies and other visions of the West that then come into my mind in terms of constructing a sort of a mythological or a fictional West,
Hmm.
as opposed to the one that is real, like when you go out camping to Joshua Tree or to Zion's National Park or something like that.
Right. And do you see a parallel there between sort of the Western landscapes, the nocturne, and also kind of a sense of outer space or sci-fi or some of those kinds of
Yeah, sure.
spaces?
I mean, I think that there was an extension of that, actually going back in kind of pulp fiction, pop culture, comic books and stuff in the 20th century, a lot of linkage between, the frontier of the American West and then this new frontier of space.
Hmm.
Even says it on Star Trek, right? Space, the final frontier. So I
Right.
think that that's a well-worn kind of path. Um, I like science fiction as it's a fertile genre for all kinds of imagination. And so it's just a good. It also doesn't have to be always about robots and lasers or Star Wars. It can
Right.
be science fiction can be psychological. It could be a story like I think it's called Never Let Me Go
Hmm.
or something like that.
Yep.
It doesn't
By
have to.
Ishiguro.
Science fiction can be exist in a a variety of different modes.
Right. And what about some of the cosmological figures? We've seen a couple of them here, both this piece, which is literally called cosmological figures, but also this work. What about some of these kind of stacked, or how would you describe the arrangement of images and your choices in some of these pieces?
Yeah, that's a pictorial strategy that I came up with early on when I started showing. The first kind of body of work I made when I was exhibiting in LA um, were these groups of figures that were kind of clustered together. And at the time, I was doing looking at history books and like on the American Revolution. And I had this idea: what if you cut the faces out of the book, the illustrated book of the American Revolution, and kind of smush them all together to make
Mm-hmm.
one picture? And so what that yielded was these kind of group portraits, or like you're saying, clusters or constellations of figures. And I like that also, that kind of related to color field painting in an odd sort of way. It was a chance to make these figures and these portraits abstract, which appealed to me, somehow kind of disrupting that sort of the common way we might use or think of that type of portrait imagery or that type of history painting. So I brought that idea back in these two pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the one that we're looking at now on the right is called The Spring, and it's the second time I've tackled that subject. It's loosely inspired by a painting in the Getty, Lawrence Alma Tadema's painting Spring, which
Mm-hmm.
is a neoclassical painting from the 1890s, and shows a procession of figures out of a Roman temple. It's a ritual of renewal or fecundity or what have you, and it's kind of a corny picture, but also a very sort of beautiful, captivating picture in some ways. It has sort of these parts about it that we consider saccharine probably now. But and I think that, to be honest, I probably first saw that painting maybe in postcard form. I
Yeah.
don't even know if I had seen the painting in person. But anyway, that gave me the idea to try and make my own picture of the spring, and sort of developing these groups that were reflect human beauty and sort of possibility. Some of it is reproductive in nature, but it doesn't entirely have to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're not in a believable kind of space. They don't exist in like a temple or anything like that. They're floating in some sort of ether.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a chance for me also then to sort of think about how these faces and figures could be changed. You'll notice that they're inverted. They have almost like a photo inversion look
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of them, or solarization. So it's a way to make beauty um, a bit uncanny or strange. Again, at least for myself.
And then, of course, the Alma Tadema is a very vertically oriented piece. And the question of whether you're doing something more horizontally in the composition of these works or vertically is also a topic, as we're seeing here.
Yes, I've done a lot of these vertical watercolors, and I really like making them. There's a dynamism to trying to work in something that is somewhat severe, or that's extreme horizontal or extreme vertical. They also are, sort of obviously sort of in lineage to scroll painting or any number of kind of tapestry sort of vertical compositions from art history. But I use them, make them pretty graphic. They usually reference a lot of comic book kind of imagery and ideas, Japanese prints. There's a lot visually that goes on in them.
One person asked me about how you organize space in your pictures. Do you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on organizing space?
Hmm. Um, I think I compose in a lot of zigzags and in a
Okay.
lot of X's.
Uh-huh.
I've noticed.
Mm-hmm.
I do it actually kind of intuitively,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then revise. So I'm often making changes and revisions to pictures. Um, my my compositions often are have a lot packed into them, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
detail,
Mm-hmm.
and um, as such, I'm always trying to find a balance because I like that fullness and that detail, and the excitement that comes from seeing so many elements presented together. At the same time, it can get to a point where it's too busy or it becomes unreadable. And so I try and find a sort of a threshold or a balance where they can still be useful and beautiful as pictures, but they also like a kind of a tension there, or they're almost slightly overstuffed, maybe
You talked a little bit
getting to the edge.
You talked a little bit about when you were cutting out a book on the American Revolution that you had this kind of constellation of figures that might have appeared in the book in a linear sense in, perhaps over chapters that were hierarchically organized or topically organized, or there was some point. What about the ways in which, when you bring stuff together, do you find new narratives? And do you also find that maybe you're almost stacking or compressing time?
Mm.
I have a kitty here. Yes, kitty. She's
I
chiming in.
Yeah. In terms of new narratives, that's always pretty abstract for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm focused more on kind of constructing the picture, which I do so with a lot of intuition.
Yeah.
Um, I usually don't have. I'm usually not too hung up on because I'm working in kind of a collage process when I'm composing. I don't always have a set uh, uh, idea about how it's going to end up,
Mm-hmm.
and that allows me to, and that's what happens with collage anyway, because there's sort of something unexpected when you place something from one context next to something out of another context.
Yeah.
You take it out of context.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I like that process because I always end up somewhere that I didn't expect to end up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they similar things happen because it's me making them over the years. But I like that they're somewhat unpredictable in that way. So in terms of finding new narratives, I'm not like I don't have an idea, oh, I want to like upend some kind of set idea necessarily. But that is what ends up happening.
Yeah.
So that's always kind of interesting, sort of what artists intend and what we do through our activity and our working, and what actually ends up coming out of it.
Well, it's interesting because, here with the image of the cowboy, of course, this is a pretty famous American image that is used by Americans to talk about different ideas that they might have about America. And you essentially learn more about the people describing the image and what they say about it than you do about the image itself. And the image could, reflect, say, the Marlboro Man or everything that's in there. But at the same time, of course, historically, it comes from the history of African Americans making their way west. What about the flexibility of these images and sort of, yeah, talking about that? What are some of the interesting discoveries or assumptions you might make? Or just, I think there's also, on your part, I often hear a real open endedness to allow people to craft their own narratives. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of that kind of sense?
Sure. Well, like in this painting, for example, the figures are kind of floating in a kind of an ambiguous space. There's not a real a recognizable landscape. There's the horizon is sort of interrupted by these clouds, these floating clouds. So I think that automatically sort of sets up that this is not they're not roping steers in a corral or charging into a gold dust town or something.
Right.
It's more of a there's more playfulness, I think, in the way that the figures are used. At the same time, there's violence in the image and the sort of hints of just what happens through dynamic kind of activity. In a sort of it's sort of in an amoral kind of sense.
Yeah.
And ecology and sort of time is referenced, I think, in the piece in that way too.
And I think
Um,
I was only going to say with regard to space, I think this is perhaps what this person was also describing, that this is so beautifully rendered. It's a whole sense of more traditional space, at least from a Western European painting style. This is a maybe more push and pull, stacked, choppy sense of space. I think maybe they were referring to some of these ranges within the continuum of how you construct your pictures.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this one definitely has more of a graphic, almost kind of woodcut look.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one is a little more, yeah, it's definitely more traditional. Looks more like an oil painting.
Yeah. And this is a great piece, Night of the Comet. I really like this in terms of this conversation. Here's an event that's larger than anybody can really comprehend, bigger than everyone as they participate. And every person is kind of having their own reaction to what is what is going on.
Yeah, I find this one funny too. This comet is, what's the significance of this comet?
Yeah.
And I like that the landscape is only sort of hinted at through that tree, and then I think in one spot there's a few little rocks, and that this procession of figures, they're all reacting kind of differently. Some people are kind of freaking out, some are just quietly contemplating, some are sharing it together. Some people are ecstatic and seem to be dancing. So I really liked assembling that group together and trying to have them kind of fit together. The figures fit together a bit like puzzle pieces. Um, and But yeah, and they're also somewhat similar to the cosmological figures or the figures in the spring. In my mind, in my imagination, I feel like maybe some of these figures in the bottom of the composition might have made their way into the other paintings.
Yeah, and also, what I was showing people is in addition to these amazing figures here, there's also a lot of both rendering and chance-driven process in your work as being evidenced here in the technique that you're using for the space. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah, I've been doing that a little more the last few years. Sometimes when I start a canvas, I'll just paint on it for a while, and I'll stain it or I'll dump paint on it, or I have a technique where I lay the canvas flat and put wet acrylic on it, and then lay a piece of thin plastic into it, and
Mm-hmm.
then I leave it there for a day or so. It dries, and when you peel up the plastic, it leaves all these kind of interesting fabric-like marks and wrinkles
Mm-hmm.
into the surface. So I did that here, and that's what, or sorry, yeah, with Night of the Comet, and that's what gave this night sky kind of a crinkly sort of
Yeah.
texture amidst all the stars and kind of celestial sort of events that are happening within it.
And it has a texture, a raking texture. If you look at it in raking light, you can see it kind of does that a little bit in the black areas.
Yeah, for sure. There's a little bit of iridescent paint in it, so it makes it shimmer a little bit. And when I'm doing some of these sort of painting experiments, it's something for me to react to. Sometimes I'll lay down the paint on the canvas in an intuitive way, in a messy sort of way, and then I imagine something in there, and
Yeah.
then that helps me start the process of then coming up with some sort of a collage composition that I insert into that start, that beginning.
I love this piece with the black sun in the center of it.
Yeah, eclipse.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my mind, so this has obviously a lot of similarity with the spring painting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Here, I was thinking about. when you look at when you see a sky chart where the constellations are shown, Orion or
Right.
Ursa Major and Minor, or any number of this Leo or Sagittarius or any of the other constellations. In my mind, I sort of see these figures as they could become that. They could become stars if we plotted the points of their wrists and elbows and heads and waists and stuff. We might come up with a star field or
Yeah.
something. There are some zodiac kind of images in there, and other kinds of mythological things, or things that seem mythological. There are things that are, only leaned that way through the way they're painted.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, this sort of a visual poem for me.
This one I really enjoyed. This is called Desert Mystery 2, and there's some interesting aspects of how it's come together.
Yes, thanks. I was looking actually at this painting, and after it was completed, and realizing there was real Cohen brothers energy kind of in it.
Yeah.
I made another desert mystery painting, and they're shaggy dog paintings in the sense that there is no answer to the mystery. There's no there's this film noir is not going to pay off with some sort of answer. But I've put a bunch of clues and objects into them that sort of simulate the appearance of some kind of a puzzle, a mystery puzzle. Um, but in this one, I sort of feel like, to me, I read it as like three different timelines happening,
Yeah.
or either they're happening at the same time in the painting, but maybe in this world, the one at the top near the horizon with the riders having a shootout
Yeah.
is a slightly different time than the old car
Yeah.
and the horse chasing after the money,
Yeah.
and then versus the more recent archaeologist working on his dig amidst this despoiled desert landscape with graffiti all over
Yeah.
the rocks,
There's
which
definitely a
any of
sense
us
of
who've been out.
unintended consequences somehow, and inhabitation and human use, which is
Yeah.
part of the desert. I mean, I think when you're in the desert, you're aware of these geologic time scales that are bigger than you. You're aware of the presence of so many people, so many stakeholders, so many different ways that people have participated in that landscape, and it's a huge part of being in there. Is these clear feelings of I don't know, some kind of I don't know, reflection of time and how one might fit into it for a brief instant.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also there's that prickly pear cactus in the front.
Yeah.
It's every bit as important as the other things that are
Well, the
happening.
archaeologist is somehow perhaps seeking to find the mystery of what's happened before. And this is, of course, a magnificent Cloud World piece, which is an ongoing series. We're going to see a second piece, Hell Figures, that actually relates to a different series. Um, yeah, what does it feel like to have ideas that are kind of that you come back to? It seems like you come back to different motifs and ideas, and you have many different ways of thinking about things and figuring imagery.
Yeah, it's a very useful kind of framing device and format, and it can
Mm.
hold a lot in there. And I do like that, and sort of similar to the actual landscape that you go out into, camping or in your RV or what have you.
Yeah.
The sky's always different.
Mhm.
It's the same and it's different. The
Yeah.
clouds are always different. So I like that timelessness of the atmosphere, set off against this kind of strip of landscape and whatever drama that holds. And here, this almost looks to me, um, relates almost like to a National Geographic type of poster or something. You almost just need the Latin names of the animals, there. But at the same time, it's oversized and it functions as a painting, and it has, different kind of subtle shifts in scale and hue and sort of color work.
Yeah.
So
The color
yeah, I like this
relationships are
one.
very striking in this particular piece.
Yeah, thank you. Um, And there's some kind of time represented in there. There, the antelope are moving in one direction, and there's the decomposing parts of one of their kin in the foreground. And then there's also these two kinds of there's the longhorn steer with its arcing horn, and then there's a buffalo sort of behind it that's grazing. So it's sort of past and present.
We talked a little bit about this piece, so I might just move ahead to, unless you want to talk more. I love this painting. I think this is one of my favorite pieces. It's very interesting in how it's organized. It's interesting how the horizon line is functioning. It's just doing a lot compositionally, and I love that it has this kind of um, crossover with like print textiles and things like that, as if the landscape was a place to embroider with human presence or something like that. I really enjoy this.
Yeah, thanks. This piece took a long time to come together.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I worked on it sort of off and on for quite a number of years. I would do something to it and couldn't figure it out, and so it went back in the drawer.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few years later, I took it out and got it pretty far along again, and I still didn't like it, and I put it back in the drawer. And then finally, I think I finished it last year,
Yeah.
or did something to it that I was satisfied with. Um, and that's something that I do,
Yeah.
and I really kind of I maybe it's one of the benefits of gaining some experience is that I've gotten better, I think, at maybe reconsidering older pieces.
Yeah.
This one to me, I think a lot of Georgia O'Keeffe and her
Sure.
skull paintings that
Yeah.
float in kind of a sky.
Yeah.
Um, so this one is doing that. I think originally the painting was pretty much a solid, kind of a representation of a wall of rock or something with
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of bones and fossils in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly I've opened it up and added an atmosphere in the center. And these kind of, the fingernail moon and the, moon or sun that's up above, those also kind of relate a little bit to those other paintings we were looking at.
Yeah.
Like the cosmological figures have some similar forms in them.
Well, we also saw the modern pictograph of the graffiti in the desert mystery painting, and here, pictographs and other ways of navigating the landscape, um, whether in the U.S. or Australia, is often a touch point for you because of another long-standing interest there and having been there a lot. Um, those things seem to also be flowing kind of in this piece in interesting ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, this is an older piece called Hell Figures. I think it's really interesting to look at it because it kind of works with some of the stretched figures that you've done in the past, and is a piece that we decided to put in the show. To sort of show some of these themes and broader engagements. Anything you want to point out about this?
Yeah, it's a smaller painting.
Yeah.
And but small paintings are sometimes fun to work out, and you have different freedom maybe in the smaller painting than you do with the big painting,
Yeah.
and vice versa. But I love occult imagery and monsters and skulls and death stuff from the past, and so I put together this collage, and they seemed like hell figures.
Yeah.
Um, Again, kind of like I was talking about when with the history book, where I would cut out the best parts and kind of push it together
Yeah.
to make composition, gain painting ideas. Um, this is a little like that. It's sort of like the best parts of occult illustration
Well, there's
put
these
together.
this feeling of a medieval kind of progression and thinking about mortality. There's famous ones and in fact, there's some medieval images in here, like the figure in the upper right. And this feeling of people navigating human time and that kind of thing. And of course, this piece, which I'll have to zoom into, and we're kind of approaching the end here, so I don't know if there's things that you might like to talk about that we haven't talked about. But this is an amazing stacked piece that has so much compacted into it, just in terms of talking about the landscape. And maybe we could end with the Leonides piece. This piece is called Stampede, Western Death.
Yes. I've always loved death paintings since I
Yeah,
was a kid.
yeah,
Benjamin West to Albrecht Dürer.
yeah.
There's a lot of them in art history. This painting, again, like was in my flat file drawer for a long time, and took me a while to figure out how to finish it. The top part is actually I've iterated numerous times.
Hmm.
I've painted that, yeah, that sort of top image in sort of one version or other, both as a large painting and I've done a print of it.
Hmm.
Um, but then I thought that it could also work as a vertical.
Hmm.
So I added more paper to it, and this sort of horde of cowboys and Indians and steers and buffalo, and just kind of a writhing mass
Yeah.
that is a death painting.
Yeah. And the gray, yellow, and red is beautiful. I was noticing the seam in this myself because I hadn't noticed it before. And, your pieces of scale usually don't have that. So it was interesting to see that you had added that on at some point. This is Leonides. And so we're kind of wrapping up. I don't know if there's things we haven't talked about or anything that you might want to talk more about. This is such a great painting.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just briefly say about this. For me, I'm not sure if they're on Mars or if they're on Earth, and I like that
Totally.
about it. It has, yeah, it has like a Galaxy magazine cover
Yep.
feeling to me that I enjoy. Um, the group of writers, they're coming up upon this strange object in the foreground,
Yeah.
and it's that is actually an object that's from that I found in a geology book. It's called the Tucson meteorite, and evidently, there in the 19th century were discovered two large pieces of iron
Yeah.
meteorite that landed in the desert,
Yeah.
and one of them, that one was used as an anvil, I
Yeah.
guess, for a long time before it was sent back to the Smithsonian. So
Humans
whatever,
just bagging on it.
that's not important to enjoying the painting, but that was something that I liked putting in there.
And what about the female figures kind of dismounting in reverse? How do you read that?
Oh yeah, I just really like that figure a
Uh-huh.
lot,
Yeah.
and I like how she's pointed in one direction and the horse is pointed in the other.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I like that there's a sense of like the horse is sort of coming to a stop, and she's hopping off to look at this
Right.
slag of
Yeah.
space iron.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some trick riding going on there. Well, Aaron, it's wonderful to have the chance to talk with you today. The show is on view until March 7th. So if you're in LA, please come by. Or if you are in town for the fairs, we're doing Felix, where we'll have Aaron's work. Or come in town that time. If you have any questions about anything you saw, just send us an email and let me know. I hope that everybody is safe and doing okay because it's a slightly nutty time. Um, Aaron, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And thanks for the chance to show your work.
Thanks very much, Philip.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Okay.